to everyone. And as introduced by Vania, my presentation is dealing with the monitoring and safeguarding of cultural heritage with a small focus of the Italian parks and gardens. As my skill is, I'm an environmental engineer, geotechnical engineer, and I will try to specify more in detail during my presentation how a geotechnical engineer is work dealing with the cultural heritage. But first of all, as mentioned before, I have to make some very, very brief rationale statement concerning that was already mentioned, that now we are, of course, in a very particular period of our life, because the climate change are threatening our cultural, natural heritage. No, we can have some certain. We have no doubt about this. So we have to be very clear that. For example, the last year was the second warmest year recorded in Europe. You can see that the western part of Europe is more affected by the rise of the temperature that was recorded by the last 16 years. At the same time, also another important statement affected the rainfall. So we have the temperature, and connected by the temperature, also the rainfall in Europe. So we have a different distribution, that was the total amount going down is decreasing, but we have a very, very concentrated with heavy rainfall, in terms of distribution and frequency of storms and very, very important heavy rainfall and precipitation, especially, for example, in part of the Western Europe, like France and Spain. Last but not least, we have to remember that, of course, the Euro-Mediterranean basin will be a laboratory, a hotspot for the future trends in terms of sea level rise, temperature, and rainfall. I make this statement because it's important to understand that these variable, meteoclimatic variable, have direct and indirect effect of directly on cultural and natural heritage. I will show you here some picture of some places I have the opportunity to work on it. You can see here in the Hegra, that was in Saudi Arabia. You can see the effect of thermal stress inducing the collapse of important Nabatean city of Hegra. Then below you can see, for example, another Etruscan necropoli that was in Norcia, was misunderstood, is in Italy, close to Viterbo, Vetralla. It was affected by, some thermoclastic effect, and also the humidity and presence of rainfall. You can see also just the David Gareggia monastery in Georgia, but you have also indirect effect due to the pollution, the blackening or sulfurization. We have, of course, in Italy the problem consisting in the stability of coastal erosion and all the heritage, close to the shoreline, as well as the sea level rise, but also the vegetation, and erosion affecting some place. You can see here the Acapana pyramid in Bolivia. There was a pre-Inca site, archaeological site, affected by erosion. But what we are able to do in Italy, we start to collect and to define since 20 years ago all our heritage. Now we know, of course, that Italy have the majority of UNESCO site, 58, but at the same time we developed a very important database that the name is Carta del Rischio, in which we collect more than 100,000 heritage distributed of all the countries. So what our institute every year we develop is to collaborate with the Istituto Centrale di Restauro, and from our side, we are environmental agency, we produce the hazard national map, dealing for example with landslide hazard, for flood hazard, seismic and coastal erosion. So we define at national scale the different hazards level. Then we combine with this heritage distribution, and then we are able to define a preliminary risk map at national level with a distribution of some specific typology of heritage affected by, for example, landslide or flood or seismic, volcanic, and so on. So during the last year, we are proposing two different sub-projects about this issue. One dealing with the coastal erosion. So you can see here we combine all the heritage close to the coastal line, in a buffer of 300 meters, in order to understand what's going to happen in the future with the sea level rise or the stability of the erosion of the coast. For all those heritage that may be affected in the future about change of environment. And let's go to the focus of my speech. When Vani asked me to make some elaboration about the focus of the meeting of today, I will try to collect all the gardens and parks that are now populating the database. So in Italy, you have more than 800 sites recorded as parks and gardens. You can see here the distribution in Italy. We have, for example, in Veneto and Tuscany region, the majority of these gardens and parks. And of course, if we can overlap the hazard, we are able to define which one of them are affected by some specific hazard and may be affected for the future. For example, you can see a specific focus on Tuscany region, close to Pisa and Camaiore and Pontedera, some place. You can see the distribution of the gardens affected by, for example, of landslide or flood hazard on the left. Then on the right, you can see, for example, the distribution on park and garden by seismic or future sea level rise. It's important to understand from static point of view the future risk that may threaten this particular typology of natural and cultural heritage in order to be aware and prepare for the future policy and strategy. We have to spend a couple of words about the use and the potentiality of Earth observation in these future challenges. Because, for example, we can use optical image from data to downstream service that can help us to make these analyses in a better way. Because we are able now, at the larger scale, maybe my speech is quite different from the speech before, because my point of view is a national, regional, European scale. But for example, at European scale, we can use image to understand the vegetation, the humidity, rainfall, the temperature, and so on. All these parameters that may affect the distribution of our cultural heritage. At the same time, we can use also radar images. With some techniques, we are able to define, they call it the ground deformation. So we are able to define the deformation and the displacement that affect in time some place. So it's important to understand that these data product service will be very important in the future. You can see here now there is an open and free services. The name is European Ground Motion Services. You can go directly in the web link, and you can see every year this application in terms of deformation, subsidence, landslide that affect European countries. So we have Italy, we have France, so we can make our analysis and elaboration. So, for example, we can use the distribution of garden and parks in Italy, the 800, and superimpose, for example, the future trend for the precipitation or the future trend for the forest fire, and monitoring this possible risk map. So this is only to understand that in Italy, our analysis, our risk map of cultural heritage is very useful to make elaboration in terms of national future possible risk that may affect this kind of heritage. Last but not least, I want to stress that in Italy we are, during the last year, we are implementing a national plan, the name is the Extraordinary Plan for Monitoring and Conservation on Cultural Heritage, that is aimed at launching an integrated satellite terrestrial monitoring system that makes it possible to monitoring at different territorial levels the risk factor and any emergency situation relating to cultural heritage. So we are now under the development of this pilot, let me say pilot project of our Ministry of Culture to better understand how to use these new data, no, to calibrate also the satellite data with the in situ data. So we are in the development of this experimental phase of this monitoring. We are acquisition the data for about, I think, more than 25 different sites for risk and typology, and to post-process this data and to understand how to incorporate this data for the monitoring, in situ monitoring, for the future mitigation and adaptation strategy. So I'm going to close my, my suggestion. I give just a brief information about, the natural and anthropogenic hazard that affecting cultural and natural heritage at European Mediterranean scale due especially to future climate change. We know that there are some direct and indirect effects about this. We have in Italy these risk maps on cultural heritage, so we can use for a forecasting model or for application. I make a very brief focus on parameters at national scale. And I will show you the support that Earth observation satellite monitoring can provide about this issue. And that now at national scale, we are implementing this extraordinary plan on conservation of Italy. Let me give you, last but not least, a roadmap, a general framework, a roadmap that can be useful both from Italian and French sides, because, for example, it's important to have the number and typology and distribution, and also the localization of the exposed element. Okay, so the digitalization, geolocalization of all the site under analysis investigation, for example, parks and gardens. Then we can move to define which kind of hazard we want to investigate. Now, for example, flood, landslide, seismic. So we have the exposed element, the hazard map. Then we combine to produce the risk maps at national level. That the last steps is to use, for example, satellite products and services for the in situ monitoring national plan, in order to be able to make some policies concerning protection, safeguard, and mitigation and adaptation. Just to finish that, in June, I will try to implement a small summer school on Copernicus for cultural heritage. So is an invite to the ones that are interested about this issue. So we'll give you more information in the future day. And that's all. Thank you for your attention.